All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are diving deep, deep into contracts.
Ooh, contracts.
Yeah, contracts, they sound kind of like uh, scary, maybe?
Formal.
Formal, yeah. Little intimidating, but honestly, they're everywhere. Like,
Hmm.
we deal with contracts all the time, and we don't even realize it.
Absolutely. Every day.
Yeah. So we're going to, break it all down, make it make sense, and you'll be surprised, I think, how many times you've actually,
Oh, yeah.
shaken hands on a legal agreement without even knowing it, you know?
Exactly. And that's what I think is so fascinating about contracts is it really is like the bedrock of how we trust each other, right?
Right.
Because we live in a society built on agreements.
Yeah.
And we need some way to make sure that if I say, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Right.
Like that actually has some weight behind it. And that's what contracts do. Contracts give those promises teeth.
I love that. Give them teeth. That's a good way to put it. But okay, contracts, that's a big word. Where do we even start? I mean, how do we break this down
Yeah.
into digestible, understandable pieces?
Well, you've got to start with the basics, right?
Yeah.
What actually is a contract? And, we can get really formal and cite legal texts, and it can sound really boring.
Please, let's not do that.
But let me just give you the gist here. Restatements. Section 1 talks about contracts, and it really boils down to this. It's a promise, or a whole bunch of promises, that if they're broken,
Uh-oh.
the law actually gives you a way to fix it. The law recognizes that there's a duty to keep those promises. So it's more than just a pinky swear.
So it's more than just oh, we shook on it, it's all good.
Yeah.
There are actual consequences
Exactly.
if you break a contract. Okay, that makes sense.
So we're talking real deal consequences here.
Real deal consequences. That's a good way to put it. Okay, so to understand these promises, these big, heavy promises, we got to kind of break down what makes a contract in the first place, right?
Right. We got to get into the nitty gritty. And you know what? I think the best way to understand this is to take a trip back in time.
Oh, here we go.
Back to middle school.
Oh, no.
Back to the days of humming. Pokemon card.
Oh, okay, all right. You lost me for a second there, but Pokemon cards, I'm back.
Imagine this. You've got your prized holographic Charizard.
Everyone wants that Charizard.
The Holy Grail. Right. And you're looking to trade it to get your hands on that Blastoise you've always wanted.
Classic trade.
Right. Now, you proposing that trade,
Okay.
that, my friend, is your offer.
So even in the wild world of playground economics,
Playground law.
we were already knee-deep in contracts.
Exactly.
But, okay, so I say, hey, you want to trade your Blastoise for my Charizard? That's my offer. But what makes that official?
Great question. So an offer has to have certain things to make it actually valid in, the eyes of the law. We got to be clear. We got to outline the terms of the agreement, what's being traded. That holographic Charizard, how much of it? One card, not the whole deck, right?
Right. Can't be pulling any fast ones here.
And for what price? That Blastoise you're after. This is where things like the Uniform Commercial Code come in, the UCC.
The UCC.
It sounds very official.
Very.
But think of it as the rule book for all things buying and selling.
Okay, so playground rules, but for the big leagues.
Exactly. Making sure everyone's on the same page. It's all about clarity, avoiding those misunderstandings.
So no fights over Pokemon cards.
Exactly.
UCC is the cool older sibling that comes in and makes sure everything's fair.
I like it. The UCC is the mediator,
Yes.
making sure the deal goes smoothly.
Okay, so I've got my offer. My offer is clear. It's all good. What happens next?
Well, it can't just be you shouting your offer into the void. Your friends got to hear it.
Okay.
And they have to say,
Got to get that Blastoise.
deal, you're on. That's acceptance, my friend.
Oh, okay, so it's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
We both have to agree to the terms to make it a real official agreement.
You got it. Mutual assent, we call it in the biz. The stars have aligned. Both sides see eye to eye.
Okay, mutual assent. I like it. But hold on. What about I don't know, what if I change my mind? After we've already kind of shaken hands on this whole Pokemon trade.
You're going to back out of the deal.
Maybe. I don't know. Can I do that?
Well, that brings us to what we call effects of contracting. And this is where things get really interesting because it's not as simple as just, a change of heart.
So are we talking about the consequences of backing out?
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about the disappointment of not getting that Blastoise you've been wanting.
Right.
When you enter a contract, it's not just like a casual promise you make. It creates what we call a legally binding obligation.
Okay.
The law recognizes this, and it gives us ways to address it if one party doesn't keep their end of the bargain.
So it's like more than just me being sad that I didn't get the Pokemon card I wanted.
Yeah.
There are actual remedies if a contract's broken.
Exactly. Remedies. We love that word in law. So those remedies, they can range from requiring the party who broke the contract to actually do what they promised,
Oh, wow.
like
Got it.
handing over that Blastoise, right? Or it could be financial compensation for whatever losses you experienced because of the broken promise.
Interesting.
So it's about making things right.
Right. So it's like the legal system steps in and says, hey, a deal's a deal.
Exactly. A deal's a deal. We got to make sure things are fair.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
But how does all of this play out in the real world? I mean, we're talking about Pokemon cards, but contracts are everywhere, right?
Oh, absolutely. Everywhere. Think about it. Buying a house, signing up for, I don't know, your favorite streaming service,
Right, it's all contracts.
all contracts. And while those basic principles we talked about, they apply to pretty much everything, different types of contracts, they have their own little quirks.
Okay, so it gets a little more complex.
Just a tad. And that's where understanding some key legal references can be super helpful.
Okay, so are we talking about like dusty old law books now? Do I need to go to law school for this?
I promise, no law school required.
Okay, good.
Think of these legal references as more like guideposts, not roadblocks. They help us navigate the system. So let's look at some of these. Let's dive into the Uniform Commercial Code, or UCC again.
All right, back to the UCC.
Specifically, UCC Section 2104. This section, it talks about merchants.
Merchants, all right.
Now, these aren't just folks with pointy hats and selling things in a marketplace, although
I mean, I guess they could be.
they could be. But in the legal world, a merchant is anyone who regularly deals in a specific type of good. So let's ditch the Pokemon cards for a sec.
Right.
Let's say you set up a lemonade stand every summer.
Ooh, I love it. Lemonade stand classic.
Right. You're out there, you got the best lemonade in town.
The best.
The UCC would look at you and say, you know what? You're a merchant.
Really?
You're selling lemonade, you're knowledgeable about it.
I mean, I did squeeze those lemons myself.
Exactly. So certain rules and expectations, they apply to you as a merchant, even if you're just a kid with a killer lemonade recipe.
Wow, okay, so even my lemonade stand falls under the watchful eye of contract law.
It does. You'd be surprised.
That's impressive, actually.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've got merchants, but what about the lemonade itself?
Ah, the star of the show. Well, UCC Section 2105, that's where we define goods. Basically, anything tangible, movable, not a service, not a piece of land, your delicious lemonade. Definitely good.
Okay, goods. Got it.
Yeah.
So this is making me see my childhood lemonade stand in a whole new light. We were little entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, you were. But let's be real for a sec. Running a lemonade stand, a little different from, negotiating a multi-million-dollar business deal, right?
Slightly different state.
Slightly different stakes. So do these UCC sections still apply in those high-stakes situations?
That's a good question.
And the answer is absolutely. They do. The scale might be different, but the fundamentals stay the same. Let's look at UCC Section 2106 now. This one focuses on those contracts for sale. It highlights the difference between agreeing to sell something in the future and the actual sale itself.
Okay, so like promising to deliver a certain amount of something by a certain time versus when the ownership actually changes hands?
You got it. You're catching on quick. It's like laying the groundwork for the deal versus actually shaking hands and saying, it's done.
Okay, I'm with you.
But of course, it's not always that simple.
Isn't it ever?
Not always. Sometimes there are these unspoken rules, industry standards, practices that everyone just kind of knows and follows.
Oh, okay, I see.
And those can have a big impact on how contracts are interpreted and enforced.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And this is where things get even more interesting, because we're stepping into the realm of UCC Section 1303C, which dives into this idea of usage of trade.
Usage of trade. Okay, that sounds kind of next level. What is usage of trade?
All right, picture this. You walk into a fancy restaurant, you're feeling good.
Fancy restaurant. Okay.
You order a steak. Now, you don't tell them how you want it cooked. You
Right.
just say, steak, please. Why?
Because I'm assuming they know what they're doing.
Exactly. There's an assumption of culinary expertise, right?
Yeah.
The chef, they just get it. They understand the unspoken expectations based on the usage of trade in the restaurant biz.
So usage of trade is like a shared understanding, like a secret handshake in a way.
I love that. A secret handshake. Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you know all these secret handshakes?
Oh,
So it
they
seems
have.
like you need like years of insider knowledge to really get it right.
And that's why clear communication is key.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be the person who looks clueless in the steakhouse. Usage of trade. I'm kind of loving that phrase. It's like those unwritten rules that can really make or break a deal, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes what's not said speaks volumes. It's all about context. You got to know the industry, the culture, even like the specific group you're dealing with. It can get pretty nuanced.
Okay, so how do you navigate that? It seems like you need like a PhD in secret handshake knowledge to make sure you're doing it right.
Well, you don't need a PhD, but good research is key. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Clarify those assumptions. It's way better to be upfront than to end up in a contract dispute down the line.
Right. Get everything out in the open. Communication is key.
Hmm.
So I guess as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into contracts, what are some of the big takeaways? What should our listeners remember?
Okay, big picture. Contracts, they're everywhere. That coffee you got this morning? Contract. Your lease? Contract. Bought something online? Boom, contract.
It's true, we're swimming in contracts, but now we're not just swimming, we're like scuba diving, really understanding what's going on down there.
Exactly. And remember, a contract doesn't have to be this scary, formal thing, with the million clauses and legalese. It's about a clear agreement, mutual understanding, and of course, consideration. Both sides bringing something of value to the table.
Yeah, just like our Pokemon cards, way back when.
Exactly. Whether it's a Charizard, a Lemonade, or $1 million deal, the principle's the same.
It's amazing how those like childhood experiences actually reflect these big legal concepts.
It's all connected. But don't forget about those unspoken rules, that usage of trade. Sometimes what's not written down is just as important as what is. Be observant, ask those questions, and don't be afraid to get clarification.
Like, we've cracked the code. This has been awesome. Thanks for guiding us through the wild world of contracts.
Anytime. And hey, next time you're making any kind of agreement, even just a casual one, take a second. Think about what we talked about today. You might be surprised how these principles pop up everywhere.
It's true. Contracts, they're everywhere. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep those agreements clear, those handshakes firm, and those usages of trade in check.